Inside Cowboys Training Camp presented by Ford is back from Oxnard, California, and Cowboys Training Camp 2023. Welcome in, everybody, alongside Haley Sutton. I'm Kyle Yeomans, as we are, of course, still here in Oxnard, California. It's the final week of training camp on the West Coast, and the final week gets to see Zach Martin's return. We talked about it a bit yesterday, but Zach Martin officially back on the practice field today for the Cowboys. It was a good sight to see.
Absolutely, and I actually got a chance yesterday when he got here after we taped our Inside Cowboys Training Camp to see him kind of mingling back in with his offensive line. He was chatting with Terrence Steele and Josh Ball, so just good to have that veteran presence back here in Oxnard.
Good to have it back, and not just for the players around him and the other offensive linemen that are learning from a guy like Zach Martin, but you also have the coaching staff that is benefiting from having really a coach on the field back in the fold. They had quite the reaction Mike McCarthy talked about.
Yeah, Mike told us this morning that they were in their offensive staff meeting yesterday when they got the news that Zach would be reporting that they got that deal done, and he said the whole room erupted. And so it's hard to not smile when you think about the impact that this guy has had on the roster. And quite frankly, I don't think there was necessarily any concerns that he wouldn't make it back to training camp, that he wouldn't be playing in 2023. But it is still a sigh of relief that you've got your general, as you mentioned, an extra coach out on the field for that offensive line that I think really will benefit from that going forward this week.
And we talked about the play calling a little bit yesterday as well in the first game with Mike McCarthy as play caller, but having a guy like that who pretty much has everything in his skill set is going to help further that along. Do you feel like he's going to be a bigger impact on the field or in the meeting rooms now that he's returned?
I think at training camp he will be a bigger influence in the meetings and kind of off to the sides helping these young guys. And I made this point earlier in the week, I believe, on Girls Talk, Boys Talk. Most of these other positions that you see on the field, the cornerbacks, the defensive line, even the wide receivers, all have that staunch veteran that all of the guys can go to. You even watched it yesterday at practice with Jonathan Hankins working off to the side with Isaac Alacarn. So just having that presence in that offensive line room, especially when you think about how many shifts they went through on that front five on Saturday's game, the expectations for a lot of these guys who've not really played a lot of NFL football, it's just a calming presence that you get back on the field.
Yeah, you talked about Zach Martin and his impact on the coaching staff. I mean, the coaching staff continues to build around this final week of training camp because it's ultra important. You're trying to mesh those veterans with the young guys. Do you feel like there's enough time left for Mike McCarthy to instill a lot of this in the final week?
I think so. He mentioned this morning they're trying to get through that final install. I don't think they got it where they wanted it last week before taking on Jacksonville. So I know the focus today and tomorrow was on making sure that they get through that final install. But this is a really unique opportunity for the Cowboys because they are here. They're not practicing against other teams. We're isolated here in Oxnard, and it gives Mike an opportunity to really turn up the intensity without affecting the players in terms of their, bodies too much like they would see in Dallas. So definitely a challenging week ahead for a lot of these guys, but that experience I think will pay dividends for that Saturday game.
It's a challenging week ahead, and when we come back, we hear from Nick Harris about the week ahead and some of the position groups he has his eye on here in Oxnard, California, with more Inside Cowboys Training Camp right after this.
Inside Cowboys Training Camp presented by Ford is brought to you by AT&T, official sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys. Sleep Number, the official sleep and wellness partner of the Dallas Cowboys. And by your Texas Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas. This segment is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors, official sporting goods retailer of the Dallas Cowboys.
And it's going to come down to, hey, you got to leave somebody one-on-one, but I think it starts with just having trust with the quarterbacks and having trust with Dak and having trust with Coop and knowing that, hey, we see this certain coverage, that ball's coming to me.
John Stevens, what have your impressions been from him?
Stretch is a baller. I mean, he's making plays in practice, making plays in camp, made plays tonight, and I think that's he's not even touching the surface right now. He's a great player, and excited to see what he kind of molds into and what he does for this team.
Jake Ferguson following the game against Jacksonville, presented by Sleep Number, talking very highly about the tight end group and what could these young tight ends bring to the table here in 2023. Alongside Haley Sutton, now joined by Nick Harris. I'm Kyle Yeomans. And Nick, the tight end group, very young, but also lots of potential up front, and they showed a little bit of that on Saturday. How can they continue to build on that this week in practice?
Yeah, easily the youngest position group on this team, but tight end coach Linda Wells is really excited about the potential for this group of guys, not only for 2023, but looking forward into beyond. And talking about Jake Ferguson, man, what he could put together as the starting tight end, having that responsibility fully onto himself, I think he's going to surprise some people in 2023. I know there's a lot of discourse around the fan base about, replacing Dalton Schultz, quote unquote, but I think it'll be really easy to do with Jake Ferguson leading that group and it being a committee type effort. And I think Jake Ferguson really showed on Saturday that he's on the way to doing that.
He's so swaggy, and he carries that whole room. They just carry themselves a little bit different. Maybe that's the youth coming to fruition. But another guy a little bit younger trying to make an impact was Mazi Smith. We saw him get just over 30 snaps in Saturday's game. Good things, a lot of things that could also be improved on. How would you evaluate Mazi Smith going forward?
Yeah, talk about a healthy dose of work in his first preseason action. I loved seeing him get that much work, first off, just because you want to get a guy comfortable before the season really starts going and when he'll have to have that really important role, either if he's starting at defensive tackle or if he's rotating in with Jonathan Hankins. But what I saw from Mazi, I think there was good, I think there was bad, and I think that's exactly what you want to see from a debut. You want to see things that are the reason why you drafted him in the first round, and you also want to see things that they can work on and build off of, because if he comes in as a perfect product, then what are we learning? What are we basing things off of? So I really like his strength and physicality. Obviously, that's what got him drafted in the first round and got him here. But I want to see that being paired with technique a little bit more. He's not the strongest guy anymore. I know Nate Newton, he's beloved by us. He's been saying that a lot. He's not the strongest guy anymore, so he's going to have to pair that with some technique. I think he's well on his way to doing that, though.
Speaking of strong guys on the other side of the line of scrimmage, with Zach Martin back in the fold offensively, does that fix some of the depth issues up front for the Cowboys, or is this just really the beginning?
Yeah, I don't think so completely. Obviously, getting Zach Martin back in the equation helps the front five, as Mike McCarthy calls it, the best five that he wants to have up front. It's back and solidified, but it takes one of those guys going down and to where you'll have a problem. And I know this offensive line complete picture is better than 20-25 teams in the NFL, but if you want to be there on the last Sunday of the season, you need to have that reliable depth option that can come in if Tyron Smith gets hurt or if Tyler Biadasz gets hurt, any of those guys. So, I would like to see one of these depth guys really step up in this last 2 weeks of the preseason, and if they don't, go get a free agent. There's still cap space available.
Very well said. That is the ultimate goal, is be the best, and in order to do that, you might have to have some depth and some rotation in there in order to do so. Nick Harris joining us here on Inside Cowboys Training Camp, driven by Ford. When we come back, we talk about the guys those offensive linemen are blocking for. How does the running back position shape out with Ezekiel Elliott signing in New England?
This segment was brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors, official sporting goods retailer of the Dallas Cowboys.
Go Cowboys!
Welcome back into the final segment of Inside Cowboys Training Camp, driven by Ford with Haley Sutton. I'm Kyle Yeomans. Now, there is some outside of Cowboys news happening in Cowboys training camp, as Ezekiel Elliott, of course, former running back for the Dallas Cowboys, signs with the New England Patriots. A one-year, $6 million deal. Great for Zeke to see him back out there. The Cowboys will see him in Week 4, by the way, at AT&T Stadium. But does that really change anything for this running back position?
I don't think so, and I think Saturday's game kind of gave you an indication that they're happy with the guys that they have in the room. I think we've addressed Rico Dowdle. He has the potential. He did have that drop, but to his credit, he was trying to make a play, and I can appreciate a guy trying to make a play when you're fighting for that second spot. We did get an update from Mike McCarthy on Ronald Jones. He's still battling a groin injury, and he told us he's likely not going to practice today, which I imagine would mean that he's out on Saturday. But Deuce Vaughn, incredibly impressive. Mike told us this morning, you saw Deuce play the way he played at Kansas State, and if we can continue that at the NFL level, I don't think there's a ton of concern in that running back room.
No, he led the FBS in all-purpose yards for a reason. He had 8 carries, 50 yards, and his first professional touchdown. Deuce Vaughn was the star on Saturday. I'm sure he'll try and star this week in training camp. For Haley Sutton and our entire Dallas Cowboys crew, I'm Kyle Yeomans saying so long. We'll see you tomorrow from the West Coast.
Inside Cowboys Training Camp, presented by Ford, was brought to you by AT&T, official sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys. Sleep Number, the official sleep and wellness partner of the Dallas Cowboys. And by your Texas Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas.
Go Cowboys!